5 key plans for white in the Rossolimo and when to use them. Play h3, knight h2 and f4 for a kingside attack. This is the most direct plan. So let's go through a line to demonstrate. So defining moves of the Rossolimo are only 4c5, knight f3, knight c6 and bishop b5 attacking the knight. Black most commonly goes g6, we respond by immediately taking on c6. Black normally takes with the d pawn as it opens up this bishop and allows black to double on the d file later on in the game. So we go d3, our ideal setup is d3, h3, castles. We'll normally put our knight on c3, our bishop on e3 and our queen on d2. Then we can move this knight out of the way and play f4 as per the plan. This allows us to force through quite a simple to play but very potent kingside attack, which is hard for black to defend, so exactly what you want. So black normally goes bishop g7, we'll castle. Black normally goes knight f6, he can also go e5. This is his typical setup in the Rossolimo because both pawns form a kind of Maroczy bind on our centre. We're not planning to advance in the centre, we're going to advance on the king side, so this pawn on e5 is actually a target for our f4. So, knight f6, we'll go h3. Again, black's not really threatening bishop g4, but it's a useful move, it makes a hole for our knight, and later on, we'll get our bishop on e3, it will cover this square, prevent the knight coming there. So, castles, knight c3, again this is the main line, knight d7. Now, black's main plan in the Rossolimo is to get a knight to this d4 square. It'll take 4 moves to do it, there's several possible routes it can take, but the main route it will take is knight d7, f8, e6 and then d4. And then it's a bit awkward for us because we can't capture on d4 without allowing black to undouble his pawns, so we want to delay this maneuver as much as possible, basically by starting our own kingside attack. So we'll go bishop e3, black will carry on with e5, we'll go queen d2, achieving our ideal setup, rook e8, and now here's the plan with knight h2. So this is the fastest way to get the f4 break in. Another alternative is to go bishop h6 first, the knight can come back to d2 and possibly onto c4, which is a good plan which you often see in these kind of king's pawn openings, but the most direct way is knight h2. So black carries on with their plan with knight f8, we can then go f4. This is awkward for black because if we take and the bishop recaptures, we'll then get a tempo with knight g4 or f3 and the bishop will be forced to move back. Black will normally just take, losing his Maroczy bind. We then have, again, very simple clear plan of putting our rooks on the f-file. We're going to go move this rook back and then go bishop h6 to clear away the strong dark square bishop. We can follow up with knight g4. Meanwhile, black will try and continue with his plan, but black will typically try and batten down the hatches with f6, and this is quite an awkward defensive task. The valuation is plus 0.6, so much better for white, and it scores extremely well. So this is probably the simplest, most direct plan, and I would recommend it against lower rated players who are less likely to know this theory. Plan 2, break up the queenside with b4. So going back to this position, again we take on c6, d takes c6, d3 we set up our central pawn chain, very standard, bishop g7, castles and e5. Again, black tries to set up this Maroczy bind. So we go h3, useful move because it supports our bishop on e3, knight e7, black is maybe going to play f5 in the future. This knight might come back to c8 and into d6 for example. We go bishop e3, black is forced to play b6 to cover this weak pawn. This is a very standard setup where black will often end up playing a5, we'll play a4, our knight might come to d2 and c4 and play against this weak b6 pawn, and since black has double pawns, he can't really advance on the queen side, it's a static target for us to play against. But the key point of this plan is we have a tactic. So knight bd2, castles, throw in a4, a5. Black won't allow us to play a5 ourselves because then we'll end up taking this b pawn. We'll end up with an open a file which our other queen and rook can come to later on. Our knight will sit on c4, can't be dislodged by b5 because we'll take on c5. So black plays a5, we go knight c4 attacking this weak b6 pawn. If black carries on standard development, queen c7, we have an amazing tactic, b4. If black takes with the a pawn, we can sacrifice a pawn with a5. This pawn is now hanging, so black has to take. We can take on c5, we're threatening bishop b6 with a fork on the queen and pawn, so we will get our pawn back. And if you look at black's pawns, they're all completely static. Black has no way to advance on the queen side, he can only wait for us to basically hoover up all the pawns there. As you can see, the valuation is in our favour. So, back in this position, black can't take with the c pawn obviously, because you have the same thing. So, the best move is b5 with chaos on the queen side. So we'll go knight takes a5, c takes b4, and we'll go knight back to b3. Now black is a pawn up, especially after rook takes a4, but this pawn structure is so static, black can't play it here, these pawns are doubled, and therefore we have a huge positional advantage. Our bishop will come to c5, our knight can put pressure on the Kingside even later on with knight h2 and maybe play f4 down the line with the typical plan. We have a very nice positional setup, so as you can see the Rossolimo is an attacking opening but also a manoeuvring opening, so it's great for both play styles. Play e5 against e6 but only when black can't dislodge it. So let's see what happens if black plays e6 instead of g6. We take again on c6, we want to get rid of that strong knight, and we'd go b3. This is especially powerful as our bishop will tie this bishop down to the defense of the pawn. Black's creates a lot of dark squared weaknesses around his position. If black goes d5, we leave the pawn on e4, we'd play something like e3, because then if he takes and we take, this will leave him with very weak doubled isolated pawns. The problem with having double pawns is they're great defensively, but if you try and be mobile with them, they'll just end up becoming a weakness. So black can't really go d5 here. He'll instead go for the knight maneuver, knight e7 to g6. This will discourage us from playing e5. If it's knights on g6 and we play e5, he will try and immediately dislodge it with the move f6. And once the c pawn's out of the way, he can start to play d5, advance in the centre. We want to prevent that, so we need to time e5 at the right moment. So let's see a line. So b3, black continues with his plan, knight e7, we go bishop to b2, knight g6, h4, key move, dislodging that knight. Now black's essentially forced to play h5, because if he lets us play h5, he'll have to go straight back to e7 and his position will be a mess. So he goes h5. This means f6 now leaves this knight quite weak and unprotected. So we can actually go e5 here. Again, like I said, you have to be careful going e5, because if it's too weak, black can pile up on it with moves like queen c7 and f6. You can't really do that here. If he tries, we can go queen e2, support this beachhead at all costs. This other knight can come out by a3 and c4. Again, black can't really play d5. We can castle queenside even and start an attack in the centre. We don't even mind sacrificing a central pawn here because our position will just be so strong. Meanwhile, black's not really got a good development plan. Moves like bishop e7 and castles leave the king looking very airy. So f6, queen e2, black can try taking on e5. We'll play knight a3, just leave this awful pawn structure where it is. Black can try and play around it, so d6, knight c4, and again you can see the evaluation is +1. We'll solidify our position with moves like d3. Black can now play d5 because e5 would be weak, so we can play d3, castle queenside, bring our rooks to the centre, play g3, just slow solid moves that basically ask the question of what black is really doing with his position. We've got so many holes we can exploit once we're fully developed. Rule 4. When the knight comes out to f6, chase it with all your pawns until it ends up on a passive square. This is a plan that applies when black plays a much lesser played move, knight f6. We want to chase that knight as if it's Alekhine's defence all the way to the a6 square, where it will be very passive. So we start by developing, or taking on c6, then we play d3, queen c7, now e5. Because black was threatening to play e5, we get there first. This knight will go to d5, we then continue to chase it with c4, knight b4, a3, and knight a6. Now the reason black allows this is because our d3 pawn can become weak. He's going to play bishop f5, rook d8, could even bring his queen into the action as well, and attack this pawn. There are a lot of nasty positions where this pawn ends up pinned against the queen, and this pawn now hangs, and so on. That's how black gets the initiative, but if you play it right, that won't happen. We're going to support this pawn with queen e2, we're going to castle and bring our rook to d1, we're going to play knight to c1 as well. So let's see the line. We'll castle, bishop f5, queen to e2, getting out of the way when black plays rook to d8, and indeed he does. Rook d1, g6, where else is that bishop going to go? h3, which is always a useful move in the Rossolimo. Just play it when you have no other plans, because it will always come in handy 10-15 moves down the line. Black can also go h6, and then we'll play a plan of knight c3, we'll put our bishop on f4 to shore up this pawn a bit more, and then we'll play g4, exploiting the fact that this bishop does not have many squares. Black can't really put any more pressure on this pawn. If he plays queen d7, we'll just play knight c1 and it's fine, then we'll have f4 as well. So he'll go for something like bishop g7, castle, and again in the Rossolimo, you can't play with your queen side. All your pawns are there, but you can't move them because these double pawns will get weak if you do. So b5 is not really on the cards. So black can look forward to, as you can see by the evaluation, a much worse middle game where we have a clear plan to expand on the king side and where he's forced to play defensive moves to just batten down the hatches. Plan 5. In the event black plays d6 instead of e6, knight f6 or g6, we go c3 and d4, build up slowly. Now let's say black goes d6, a much lesser played alternative. This is the only situation I would say it's better not to take on c6 for the following reason. If you do take, black takes, and then black will get their optimal structure with e5. This is what you want to avoid as white, because let's say you castle, black will play e5. Now the only way to really make progress is c3 and d4. This will allow black to get rid of his doubled c pawn, and then the remaining 3 pawns become quite mobile, and because you've lost the 2 bishops, you don't want to be playing such an open position, because black's bishops will take over the game. So, and also the plan of knight a3 and c4 from earlier doesn't work because this pawn is very well defended, it's hard to attack, and of course black has easy plans to activate and develop with bishop a6, rook b8, so you want to avoid this as white. Instead, I would recommend a slower, more manoeuvring plan with castles. We want to bring our rook to e1 and our bishop back to f1 in the event black plays a6. So most likely black will just play bishop d7, standard development. We'll play rook e1, black will go knight f6, he wants to fianchetto, castle, go e6, kind of play this like a closed Sicilian, and then long term he's going to be wanting to expand on the king side. We'll be playing our typical Rossolimo plans with bishop back to f1, we'll put our pawns on c3 and d4, bishop on e3, we'll activate our queen and play for f4 eventually after enough preparation. So let's see the line. So c3, a6, we now have created this hole on f1 for our bishop, which can come back out later. Bishop to g4, again black's a bit congested, so he wants to free up some queenside space. Getting rid of this light squared bishop is a good way to do it. We'll play h3, bishop takes, queen takes, and g6. Now this pawn chain is a good setup against black's fianchetto because this bishop is biting on granite now. This pawn on d4 will always be well enough defended that black will not be able to take it and activate his bishop. So d3, bishop g7. We're going to want to go bishop e3, knight d2. We'll bring our queen back to e2 or d1. Play f4 after enough prep. This knight can then manoeuvre its way all the way onto the kingside like this and start the typical Rossolimo kingside attack. Meanwhile, black's again going to go for the slow plan of castles, e6, b5, a5, and it becomes a kind of closer sitting, except we have the bishop pair, we're attacking the king side, whereas they're attacking, queenside, where our king is not. So this is very pleasant for white to play, and it scores very well for white, and as you can see, the evaluation is very positive. So this is much better than taking on c6 for this particular line. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you understand the plans in the Rossolimo now. As you can see, it's very simple to learn, quick to play opening. The onus is on black to defend, and quite often we'll be getting kingside attacks or great positions. So I hope you'll find it useful for your tournament games. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.